Okay, we will go ahead and get started, but I am so glad that you guys are here. Um, it's a beautiful day in Portland, so I'm really grateful for that. If you guys remember, if you were on the call last time when I led it, we talked about the thought model, which I know some of you are really familiar with, and maybe you've had a coach or you're in Kristen Boss's stuff, but I have another coach also that I'm working with, and that is what she uses. And so I am learning and growing slowly and imperfectly through that. But it is so pivotal in our everyday lives, in our businesses. It is one of the things I really think can just unleash a lot of things for us if we work through some of, especially the negative thoughts that we have in our life. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So let's see here. What does that look like? Okay, so before I explain it, but one of the things I'm doing is a thought download. And this is actually going to be one of your assignments for the week. If you want to do that, it's just writing down your thoughts. And honestly, at first I was like, I don't even know what that looks like, but you have thoughts. And once you write those down, I assure you, you'll have thoughts about your thoughts. So it's so good, but just do a thought download. And what that looks like is, what thoughts do I have today? And then how does that thought make me feel? What actions do I take out of that feeling? And what result does that produce? So for example, yesterday when I realized that I was leading this call today, honestly, my very first thought was, I have nothing to offer this group. I was like, I literally don't know what I would want to share with them. I don't think I have anything beneficial to say. So let's just cancel it. Like, I don't want to waste anyone's time. So that is my thought. And if that's my thought, then how does that make me feel? Well, it made me feel like I wasn't enough. I was insecure, which really leads to shame, feeling small and insignificant. And so, what did that thought make me do? I literally, well, I wanted to cancel it, which is like pure avoidance at its best. I then went and ran errands to distract myself from planning anything that I was going to do. Um, and it makes me want to hide or even downplay what I do have to bring to the table or what I am learning, and things that I could pass on that are beneficial. So the question that I have to ask myself is, how is that serving me? Well, the thought did not serve me well. And so if I would have just stopped there, then I would have made really unhealthy choices, right? And it would not have moved me forward. It's just not helpful. And so I even had to reframe the question. And sometimes this can be helpful for you too, to reframe it and say, well, what am I learning? Like, if I'm feeling like I'm not significant or I don't have anything to share, really sit and think, well, what am I learning? Because we are always learning something. What can I pass on? And I think that all of us feel like this with our teams. You're like, oh, I don't have a team. Like, that's a thought. Or I don't have a big team. Or I don't have anything to offer my team yet. And that's just not true. And it's going to sabotage you. It's going to sabotage your growth. It's going to sabotage your team's growth. So sit with, what am I learning that I can pass on? How can I love them well today? And how can God use what I do have to offer? And our brain is going to process that very differently. And it's going to produce a different feeling and a different action than if I just sit in, I have nothing to offer. So those are really big things. But what that led me to think about was, well, I've just always felt average. And I know that I'm not alone in this. And I have people all the time, even when it comes to your health story, you're like, oh, well, I don't have a health story like yours because my health story is pretty dramatic. But the thing is, if you're sitting here, you have a health story. And it doesn't matter if it's one thing that's been helped or if it's 50 things that's been helped. That one thing can benefit someone else if you share it, right? And so, really, even just that we're average as a thought, and it makes us really sit back and think, well, I don't have anything to offer, and that's just not true. One of the other things that I've always said is, well, I'm just a jack of all trades, master of none. But what God has continued to remind me of over and over and over, and even in the last week again, is that he is in the business of using average people, you guys. Average people who show up faithfully day after day after day are the ones who create a ripple effect for good. Like that is just how it is. And I love the verse in Acts 4:13 where it says, when they saw the courage of Peter and John and realized that they were unschooled, ordinary men, they were astonished and they took note that these men had been with Jesus. And I, I find such hope in this because I'm like, yes, I can relate to unschooled and ordinary, right? Like none of us went to school for network marketing for sure. And I feel very ordinary. But that means God can use me. God can use, like my team can look at me and say, well, if she can do it, I can do it too. And I say that all the time. And so take heart that God is in the business of using average and ordinary people. One other thing that I loved this year, I read Liz Bohannon's book called Beginner's Pluck, and she is the one who created Seiko Designs, which is an awesome company, and also a network marketing company now. Like she set it up as an MLM years after starting, which is interesting. But she also was just on Kristen Boss's podcast on episode 44. And that was one of the things I listened to in the car yesterday as I was procrastinating and running from like the thought of leading, right? And so God, again, can uses all the things, even when we're running from things that we need to be doing. And she talks about being average. And I read this to my team when I first read it in that book because I resonated with it so much then too. But she was like, 99% of people are really just average. It's average people who start small and never give up. They build the biggest impact along the way. And you guys, that is so freeing to me. And she was like, own your average. And no matter where we're at, how we feel, God can use us. So just show up and let him multiply what we have. That to me is what's inspiring, right? It's when we see like the unicorns out there. That to me isn't all that inspiring because I want to see the average people doing things that make a difference, because it makes me feel like, yeah, I can do that too. And even just when I look around this call, you guys, and as I've gotten to know so many of you on this team, I'm like, yes, these are amazing women. You guys are amazing women with different stories, different experiences, different skill sets and talents. And you have a community of people and teams around you that only you can reach. So really lean into that and remember that. I saw a quote this week also that said it was basically talking about being like someone who just shows up faithfully and consistently, and how it's the consistency that matters, not the intensity that matters. And I love that. I absolutely love that. So I want you to think each day, like, who can I fill their bucket? Like, who today can I fill their bucket? We talk about this with our kids all the time. It's one of the things that we've been talking about with our son. Like, are you filling the buckets of people around you? And even we have to think, how do I fill our kids' buckets, right? But we have to do that with people around us so that we're not just taking out. But who can you go and encourage? Who can you go and love? Whose bucket can you fill? Because even Kristen Boss talks about that. We have to be filling buckets before we can then go and ask, like, to make a withdrawal, essentially. Or if we're going to ask someone, hey, would you consider trying our product? We want to be also filling people's buckets because that is super important. So even thinking through each day, who can I do that for today? And we don't have to do it like perfectly. We don't have to have it all together to do any of these things. Just show up with what you have, who you are, and serve and love the people around you. Okay, so the other thing, I'm going to get into actions, but let me make sure I didn't forget anything. Oh, the other thing that I wanted to encourage, there are always things in our businesses that we have to do that we maybe don't love to do. Like I really don't love reports or going and looking at numbers. It is not my thing. But there are things that I love doing in this business. So make sure that every week you're doing something that you really love about your business, because if you continue to do those, you're going to have the mindset of, I get to do this, not I have to do this. And of course, there's always the tasks that we don't like. That's just how life is. That's called adulting. But continue to remember, oh yeah, do the things you love and that bring you joy in this process as well, because that is going to fuel your tank, honestly. Okay, so the actions for this week, I want you to do that thought download that I said, even if it's just 5 minutes at the beginning of the day, at the end of the day, just kind of be aware, like, what are the thoughts that I have? What are the themes in those thoughts? Is there something that continually comes up? And just sit with it, write them down, don't judge it, and be curious about why they're there. Another thing that Liz in that interview with Kristen talked about was the curious quotient. And she said, I think that this is way more important even than IQ. Because if you can be curious about all kinds of things, about learning, about experimenting, trying new things in your business. If you can be curious about why you do what you do or why you think what you think, it is going to make you so much more aware, and you're going to be able to change those things that are not serving you well. And so this process for me has been huge. Like, it's been so important. And it's helped me to stop and think, okay, that thought is making me feel this way. And it's producing this action or this inaction. And that's not what I want. Like, what I really want is this thing way over in the opposite direction. So I guarantee you, if you write these down every day, if you spend some time, you are going to find some things that are creating feelings and actions maybe that aren't serving you, and it's going to help you in the long run with your businesses. And so I would love for you to do that. The other thing that I am currently doing with my coach is she wanted me to write down at least 25 things that in the next 2 months that are worthy fails in our business. So, and she calls it worthy fails because you frame it in your mind that I'm going to go and I'm going to do this and it might fail, and that's okay. But the ones that do succeed and the ones that do go well, and even go well, that's a thought, right? But the things that we do, they're going to move us towards our goals. They're going to move us closer to the next rank. They are going to grow our business because we are in action and we're going for it. Not because we think it's going to work out every time, not because it's going to succeed every time, but because we're trying new things. And so to brainstorm a list of 25 things. And I don't know about you guys, but even in that for me, and I've always been this way, but when I thought, oh my gosh, I have to come up with 40 things, that was so overwhelming to me. And instantly I was like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what else I could do. I don't know how to do that. And as soon as we say, I don't know, it shuts our brain down and we can't move forward. Like, it keeps us stuck. And so if you find yourself in that spot, even in just brainstorming the list, remind yourself that these things don't have to be perfect. Don't judge them. Don't think, well, that's not going to work. Just write them down and reframe it to say, well, if I had to make a guess of something that could work, what would it be? If I had to guess, what would it be? Because it can shift something in your brain, instead of I don't know, or that's not going to work. If I had to guess, or even saying a part of me feels stuck, instead of it being all of you, it's just a part of you, which means there's room for a part of it to work and a part of you knows what to do. So just get that list down and then make a plan to implement some of those things. You don't have to do all of them, but make a plan to start implementing them. Put them in the calendar. So for example, some of the things on there that I had written down, and some of them don't have to do with Plexus at all. It's like, create a series that I can talk about. I'm trying to write a series on our scoliosis story. I am trying to put together a resource that would serve scoliosis families in the journey when they first start, because that's part of my audience. And it helps serve a group of people that eventually they're going to see also plexus. So it doesn't have to be plexus specific. Create a freebie, do a live once a week, do an interview a week, make a phone call a day, do a webinar, create 4 reels a week, like that. Those kinds of things, they're going to be things that you're just continuing to try to put yourself out there, to create content. Maybe it's you approach one new person about the business a week, whatever that is. So make your list, and then I would love it if you could share 5 of those ideas in the chat this week, because I think it's so beneficial to share the wealth. That's what we like to call it, because someone else may have a really, really great idea that I don't have, and I really want us to learn from one another. So put those in the chat this week. And then again, I just want to remind you to show up with what you have each day and know that God can use what you have to offer. In one of my coaching appointments, even I think it was before 2021, and Kristen was coaching me, and I was like, well, I just feel weary. And she's like, okay, you feel weary. Why can't you show up and still serve and feel weary? And it was basically me thinking, I have to show up perfectly to show up. And so the reminder is that is not what is expected of us. We can serve wherever we're at, in all our imperfections. Bring your authenticity, bring who you are, and God can use what you have to offer. And so don't think it has to be done perfectly. And own your average. Consistency trumps intensity every time, in my opinion. And then create your list and choose one of those things at least a week to move ahead on, like just one at a time. You don't have to do them all. Just do the next right thing. Action creates confidence. I think confidence doesn't create action, and don't overthink it. So we're going to be taking imperfect action and celebrating it. So that is actually all the content I have today. 20 minutes, but if you guys have questions, I would love to hear them, or if you want clarification on anything, now is your chance to ask. All right, well, if you guys don't have anything, that's all I got for us today. So we get to finish early. Can go enjoy the rest of your lunch hour, but thanks for being on today. We'll see you guys next week.